On behalf of Charles Eason and the Bob Green family, we want to welcome everyone here for our tribute to Uncle Bob today. And a little bit later on, we're going to offer you the opportunity, if there's something you want to share, something you would like to say, something that reminds you of Uncle Bob, or a memory that you have. So you might want to be thinking about that. If you want to, we'll have that time in just a little bit. We also have the register from the service yesterday, so if there's anyone here today that did not get an opportunity to sign that register, I'm sure Charles would want to have a record of you being here today. A couple things I wanted to say. I was thinking this morning about how unique this place is, and you know, Worth and Fran and I, we have a lot of memories of this cemetery, and a lot of you too, and Sydney as well, a lot of family here. And I think it's just really interesting that Uncle Bob lived with his immediate family, just steps away in his home, and he's back with them again. He's on this far end, his brother is on the other far end of the front row, and his parents are sort of the front row. So I think that's really interesting. I just think, you know, what family unit gets to have that as their final resting place. I think that's very interesting. It's also interesting that in this place we can kind of connect the dots from Uncle Bob and from all of us back to the very first person who was buried in the cemetery and started the cemetery. I mean, we can actually stand about where Jeff Wagner is, and we can connect the dots from Uncle Bob to his parents, to his dad's mother, which is about where Brian Mills is standing, to her father, which is just right behind Uncle Bob, where the American flag and the Confederate emblem is. And he, Hiram Lindsey Barnes, was the very first person buried in this cemetery and started it. And you know, before we go any further, I would just like to, you know, thank my brother and sister for all that they have done, and Charles, to make this happen and make it so special. You know, Worth has been mowing the cemetery for decades, and his family helping him. And even though it is a private family cemetery, it's really special to all of us. And I think some of us, me, myself, it took me getting a little bit older to appreciate what our parents had valued for so long. So today we're here to pay tribute to Uncle Bob, and to begin with, I'm going to ask Brad and Brent Wagner to come up. Thank Jerry for all that you guys have done to help make this day special for us. Most everybody here is family, but I did want to recognize Uncle Bob's first cousin, Sydney Green, that's here with us today. Thank you for being here. And Charles and Uncle Bob have some special neighbors and friends that are here. Ellen, we appreciate you being here. And Debbie and Ellen both. They've all done lots to help look after Uncle Bob, along with lots of people. But thank you for coming and being here. It means a lot to us that you are here. So Charles has some remarks, and Mark and myself and my sister Fran, we will be able to share our eulogies with you.
I do appreciate you being here, and that body is touched by it. And I appreciate Brad and Brent reading that to you. We put the 3 trees on its headstone so that y'all could remember the story, remember what it means. Bobby didn't talk about it very much, but he absolutely believed in the story of Christmas and the story of Easter. I do believe he was a Christian and that he is in heaven, and it does mean a lot that it was read here. You know, you only live this moment one time. We won't have that opportunity again, so I do hope you remember it, and I do appreciate you reading it. Bobby didn't share a lot of his thoughts about some things, but I think everybody knows that he loved Christmas as much as he did theater. He couldn't wait till I started putting up the trees before Thanksgiving. He would say, you know, when are you putting up the tree? We're putting up the tree this weekend. And so, and he would count the number of trees we had like a child would count how many toys they had. So it was just never enough. You know, wasn't a materialistic person. He didn't care about the gifts. But he did like Christmas. He did like the decorations. And one of the things he valued most throughout our years of always having Christmas trees were Claire Sue's mailboxes. He looked forward to getting another mailbox, every year. And as the children came, he also wanted a mailbox with their name on it. I will tell you that I look forward to continuing to use those mailboxes on my Christmas tree going forward for many years. I'm not sure that I will keep having 6 Christmas trees, but I will have one and I will use the mailbox. And it always meant a lot to me. Claire Sue's been nice enough to actually make enough mailboxes for all of us today, and she's actually going to give them out. If you've got the strength, or maybe worth, we can pass that basket around. It's got 2019 on it and a cross. I hope that you'll treasure it like I will and use it on your Christmas trees too. I'll give that just a minute to get around. There's enough for everyone. Thank you, Claire. If there's someone that's not here, feel free to get one for them. If you don't mind, Jerry, if you'll keep going with Bobby, I appreciate it. Again, he was not a materialistic person, but there was something else that he enjoyed putting on his Christmas tree, or enjoyed me putting on his Christmas tree every year. And there was so many things on there you might have not noticed it, but in the 70s, he collected a set of Gorham silver snowflakes. They were dated in the 70s, and then they stopped making them. And again, he didn't have a lot of materialistic things, but there was something he thought was nice that he had, and we always had it on the trees. And I thought it would be appropriate for me to share those with his family and give each one of you one. And I'm hoping that you will, get it out once a year and polish it off. And if you don't even have a tree, you can actually just put it on the nearby table, so that the nieces and nephews and grandnieces and nephews will get one. And I don't know if which day you're getting, which year you're getting, and I'm missing people. Brad, Brent, there's 9 of you, and we're Brian and Kevin. So this one goes to Kevin. So I hope that y'all will enjoy them, and I hope you don't mind that I kept them. But again, they're all different, and I hope that you will enjoy it. Again, Bobby was precious to all of us, and I will tell you that he had chosen to be cremated many years ago, and it wasn't because of the cost. He was never proud of his looks, and didn't want to be in a casket, didn't want to be seen. He just felt like it was the cleanest way to go. But it's different. I know most of you probably haven't dealt with the cremation, and I haven't either. So it's different. But one of the opportunities it gave us, and I had talked to him about that, was it did allow me to have a keepsake urn, and so I have one. But also, Barry, Fran, and Worth said that they would like to have one too. So I'm honored to be able to give them one, and I know that they will treasure it as I will treasure mine. Much more to say. I know I don't have to tell you how much I love you. And I know a friend wants to know if I love y'all, and I can tell you it's with all joking aside and out of the bottom of my heart, I do love you, and I do feel like your family, and I will keep up with you. So thank you all.
Some may remember him as teacher, musician, or mentor, but to us and our extended family and friends, he was affectionately known as Uncle Bobby. Of the countless memories, one clearly stands out. Children and adults would gather around a piano or his Hammond organ, singing, maybe or maybe not, knowing all the words and melody, while Uncle Bobby effortlessly, magically touched each key with ease, bringing familiar tunes to life. These informal celebrations happened anywhere black and white keys were available. An old upright in our parents' basement, at dinner restaurants, and in recent years, his Myrtle Beach home for gatherings. Just one more, Uncle Bobby, someone would plead. His talent, no, his gift for music is a significant memory for all who knew him. Uncle Bobby modeled for us the love of theater, the arts, travel, and especially education and music. Looking at his family, you will find educators, musicians, and singers among the group, with a few of us dabbling in local theater. Let's go see a show Uncle Bobby would arrange, whether it be in Charlotte, New York City, or at a local theater production. Clearly, his special skills live on in us and many others that he touched. He opened our eyes to new experiences, drama, culture, and sprinkled in exciting cities many of us have come to visit. Unknowingly, he inspired us to become better people. Missing him is an understatement. We remember his life with fondness and are grateful for the enlightenment he shared. We'll recall the tunes of precious memories from happy times that continue to ring out from the gifted fingertips of Bob Green. We love you, Uncle Bobby. You will always be with us.
Okay, take it away.
Okay, this is the Barnes Cemetery, and today is May the 19th, 2019. And this is our family cemetery. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about it. My dad, Kirby Green, could give you a lot more information about it, but I unfortunately didn't pay attention like I should have. He and my mom were very devoted to this cemetery, but it's his family cemetery, not my mom's. But she lived in Churchland most of all of her life, married to him, and was a real good caregiver of this cemetery, and my brother Worth as well. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about it. This grave right here was the very first person buried in this cemetery. And actually the writings of his name are on the other side. This side we see the monument, we see the Confederate emblem, the American flag. This grave belongs to someone named Hiram Lindsay Barnes. He was the first person buried in this cemetery, and I'm going to explain that to you. Hiram's dad was John. John owned land much to this direction and much to that direction. And they lived in a house which is now owned by James Green, who's also in their family. And that's where they lived. They lived in that house, and Hiram went to the Civil War. He had lots of brothers and sisters. When he came home from the Civil War, he was one of the oldest. I think he was like the second oldest. And Ancestry.com and findagrave.com is a great place to put in the name Hiram Lindsey Barnes. So he came home from the Civil War, got married, had a child, but he was very distraught from the Civil War and all the things that happened there. And by today's standards, that would probably be the PSTD that you hear people talking about. And he hung himself. Now, rumor has that it was in his home. There are steps there. I've been in that home many times, and there's like an overlook to down to the first floor, which would have been a place that could have been used for that. We've heard the barn, not really sure, but most people believe it happened in the house. So he had a wife and a 14-month-old child. So his father was one of the founding members of the church, John Barnes. He was one of the first 11 members of the church. He gave land to help build part of the original church. So just imagine that, you know, you're a member of the church, a deacon, a founding member, your child has committed suicide because of their being so distraught, and they have a 14-month-old child that you're probably going to have to help raise, and your child can't be buried in the church cemetery because of it being suicide. I can't even begin to imagine what that would be like. Today, that would not be a problem. But what they did is they marked off this area. It's kind of like along those crepe myrtle trees over there to the highway, and then to the back, there's stone markers back there as well. And this became the Barnes Cemetery. He was the very first person buried here. Now later, as years went on, his parents died, and they're buried in this cemetery as well. And lots of his brothers and sisters are buried here. This is his wife. She went on later to marry someone else, had another child, but that is his wife's grave right there. So let me connect me to Hiram Lindsey Barnes. Hiram's only child was Fanny Barnes. Fanny married Jim Green. That's their grave right there. That's Jim and Fanny's grave right there. We'll go around to the front of it in a few minutes. Jim and Fanny had about 12 children. One of their kids was Kirby Worth Green Sr. And this is his grave right here, Kirby Worth Green Sr. His wife was May. That's my grandparents. They had two boys. One was Kirby Green Jr., and this is his grave. And that's mine and my brother and sister's parents, Kirby and Vernell Green. And we'll go around and see the fronts of them too. We'll walk around this way. So here again, here's me. This is my parents. My dad's parents are buried here. Kirby Green Sr. Kirby's parents were Jim and Fanny, and they are buried here. And again, they had about 12 children. A lot of those children are buried in the cemetery. Fanny's father, again, was Hiram Lindsey Barnes. She was the only child of this Confederate soldier, Hiram Lindsey Barnes. So I can, in just a few steps, connect the dots and trace myself pretty quick, just a few grandpas back, to someone from the Civil War, which I think is awesome. And we come around this way. Did you get pictures of the front? I think you did. Again, Hiram has lots of brothers and sisters here. Hiram's child, Fanny, had a lot of children, so a lot of those are here. This cemetery is filling up. I mean, it's a family cemetery. It's only taken care of by personal funds and donations. And the day will come that we won't have the room here anymore. I'm hoping to be buried here because of the connection that I have. I mean, who gets to be buried in a cemetery where they can connect themselves all the way back to the first person in the cemetery? So that's a little bit of the history. If you might have other questions or other graves you want to see. Okay, we're actually here today, having given you all that information. I connect you back to Kirby Green Jr., my dad. We're here today because Kirby's brother, Bobby, Robert Lee Green, just passed, and he's being buried here. This is his gravestone. So oddly enough, Uncle Bobby is on one end of the front row. My dad is on the other end of the front row, and their parents are in the middle of the front row. So they've got their immediate family all back together again. But those are just a few tidbits about the Barnes Cemetery. A lot of people can't figure out why it's called Barnes because there's so many Greens here. But again, Fanny Barnes married a Green, and then she had lots and lots of kids, and that's kind of our connection back to the Barnes Cemetery.
How many kids did Hiram Lindsay Barnes have?
One. He had one. That was Fanny. And Fanny got married to Jim Green, and they had about 12 kids. Two of the kids had no children. One died at 11 or 12 years old, and then the other one lived to an older years, but she had no children. But the rest of them had lots of children. So when we have our Green reunion, there's a lot of them left. Some of them moved to New York. Some of them moved to North Wilkesboro. Some of them live in New Jersey. I mean, they're everywhere. And so when we get together, tracing this all back and figuring it out, it's like, now, how am I related to you? That can really be a lot of fun. But it all goes back to Jim and Fanny Green. When we have our Green reunion, we invite all the descendants of Jim and Fanny Green. Now, you know, Jim had brothers. So sometimes we're contacted by people that are like, you know, we're really not a part of your descendants, but we're like over to the side branches and down. Can we come too? And we've had people do that, you know, come to our reunion, which is kind of cool. That's kind of neat. I'd love to know more about all those legs of the tree and all those branches, but just keeping this straight, just keeping their 10 or 12 kids and all their descendants straight is really, really interesting because, you know, I'm here with my son today, Brian. This would be my great-grandparents, which would be his great-great-grandparents. And it's hard when you start getting back to the great and the two greats and the three greats to find that connection because it's people you didn't know. And so until you sit down and really start putting that puzzle together, because for me, I would love to talk to Hiram Lindsay Barnes. This was somebody that, of course, was dead long before I came along, but dead before my dad came along. I would love to talk to him about the time he lived in. You know, you go through school and you think, oh, the Civil War, that was 1,000,000 years ago, or the World War II, that was a long time ago. Really, it's not that far back when you think about it. My grandparents probably lived in a time where they knew people that had been in some of those wars. But, and another interesting thing about Hiram is we don't have any pictures of him. I cannot find any pictures of him. There's pictures of his parents. But see, his parents lived longer than he did because he died when he was in his 20s. So pictures and photography came about more. I mean, it was there when he was alive, but it came about more after he died. And so we do have pictures of his parents. We have pictures of his siblings. You know, and it's just a shame that we don't have any pictures of him. We don't really know a tremendous amount about him, but he's kind of like the star of our family when we start thinking about how did we form the cemetery. You know, he made that happen, and here we are today. It makes me think, you just never know what one event happens in the world that triggers other events happening, which makes it really interesting.
How old was Fanny when Hiram Lindsay Barnes died?
She was 14 months old, so she probably never even remembered her dad. And her mom, again, this is her mom, went on to marry someone else, and so probably that man, her stepfather, was who she would have remembered. There's a cabinet, it's a desk, it's at Uncle Bobby and Charles's house, and Brian, I'm sure you've seen it. It lifts up and you can put things in it, and it's got slots like you can put letters in. They keep DVDs in it. But we think that was built by Fanny's stepfather. He was a carpenter. So when Hiram's wife, I can't remember her name, it's on there, but when she remarried, the man she married was a carpenter. And and we think that piece of furniture, and Fanny ended up with it. Fanny ended up with that piece of furniture. I think it might have even been built for her. So when she died, when she and Jim Green were both gone, their estate was auctioned off. A lot of people used to do that, auction their furniture and their goods, their dishes, that kind of thing. And I'm sure my dad probably would even remember that auction. But my dad's parents, Kirby Sr., ended up with that piece of furniture of his mother's, who had gotten it from her stepfather. And now it's in Myrtle Beach. It's at Uncle Bob's house.
Did Hiram Lindsay Barnes have any siblings?
He did. He had lots of siblings. He had an older sister, I think her name was Sarah, and then he had lots of brothers and sisters younger than him. I think one or two maybe died as children, but he had some that went to live on, and Peggy Barnhart is the descendant of one of his brothers. So, and there's lots of people here in the community that I can connect us to that I'm like, oh my goodness, they're connected to us through Hiram because they're siblings. Their ancestors were siblings to Hiram, which is pretty cool. And Jerry Smith and I have talked this many times. He's a descendant of the Barnes, but it's another leg, and we have a hard time trying to figure out how to get them connected together.